Okay, so it looks like we are live. We are live, and it looks like we've got about a 7 minute or so pregame show, a little more than the 7 minutes. So, yeah, we'll do a little pregame show and give some folks a little time to go in. So, if you're watching this after the fact, this is March 13th, 2024, live. If you're watching it after the fact, then you can skip 7 minutes. You can skip the pregame show if you feel like it, and we'll get to the meat of the matter at 5 o'clock Eastern time in these United States. So, it's been a while since we did a live stream. I picked up a vehicle, went all the way down to Atlanta, Georgia to pick it up, brought it back here. And so we're going to talk about it. Did a lot of research, did extensive research, which is what I do when I'm spending money. When I'm spending money, I do extensive research. And that's what I did with regard to the vehicle. I'll say what it is, a 2007 Lexus LX470. And we're going to go into detail at the 5 o'clock hour as to why I picked that particular year, make, and model. Why did I pick it? Why did I pick it? That is the question. And so we're going to talk about that. We've got Leslie was already in the pregame show, the pregame show, and she made a comment. She said, we just sold our Lexus GX 2008 for a 2006 Lexus RX. Both amazing cars. Lexus makes some fantastic vehicles. Yes, they do. I would say Lexus is sort of like the Grand Seiko. Let me put this in here. Sort of like the Grand Seiko of vehicles, where if you want just reliability, you want something that's gorgeous, that gets the job done, and you don't want high maintenance costs, you want something that's robust, that's going to last many decades, then yeah, that's what you do. Get yourself a Grand Seiko and get yourself a Lexus. And in particular, we're going to talk about why the 2006 Lexus, the 2007 Lexus is even a step above most other Lexus vehicles, and why the Toyota Land Cruiser, which is basically what it is a step above all the normal Toyotas. We're going to talk about that in the show. And so we're going to talk about why I picked that particular vehicle. So, and it was an amazing trip. It was insane, actually. So I had short notice because I found this vehicle on Facebook Marketplace. I was looking for a rust-free vehicle that spent most, if not all of its life in the South, away from the salt, and one in, really good shape, a really good, solid example, low mileage if possible. So I found one with 133,000 miles on it, which for these is pretty low mileage. I mean, people run these vehicles. A lot of them that are for sale are well over 200,000 miles. You'll occasionally find one under 100,000 miles, but the key word being occasionally. So I compromised a little bit. I kind of wanted one under 100,000 miles, but I found this one and it seemed like a nice example. And so, okay, so I have very short notice. So how do I get to Atlanta, Georgia to pick up the car? I was in Frederick, Maryland at the time. There's no easy way to get there from here. I either have to go to one of the airports, Baltimore or Washington, D.C., and take a plane down there, which last minute booking, that they charge you an arm and a leg, and then I can't take things that I want to take with me on the plane. So that's an issue. And so I looked into the train, and there weren't really that many great options there either. I was really surprised, and they were not cheap. So I said, listen, it takes 24 hours to get there on a bus. So I said, I can catch the bus at the Frederick bus station, Greyhound, and ride that sucker down there, right? I said, I'll take one for the team and I'll do that, right? So the first bus got canceled. Then I grabbed another one. Then that one ended up having mechanical problems. They had to do a regen for the diesel particulate filter. And so they were delayed. So I missed one of my connections, and I think Cleveland or whatever. missed the connection. So I had to hang out in Cleveland for 6 hours to grab another bus to take me from there down to Atlanta. So anyway, it ended up being like 12 hours more than 24 hours. So 24 plus 12, you do the math. And I finally got there. So it was an adventure, absolute adventure. And I got there, and the car was a really nice example. It has a few things, what I would call deferred maintenance. The hydraulic leveling system fluid looks like it hasn't been flushed for maybe forever, and it still works fine and all, but I'm going to flush that. The brake fluid also looked cloudy. It looks like it's got the start of a little bit of an oil leak from the valve cover gasket, which is normal on these to get it, you know, over 100,000 miles of valve cover gaskets ultimately go. It's not a big job to replace those, not a huge deal, but it's a thing. So I'm going to take it to a really good mechanic, and I haven't decided who yet, and have it what I call zeroed out, have it gone through and have anything it needs done so that it's going to be as bulletproof, reliable as possible for like the next 100,000 miles. So that's kind of what I'm going to do to get this show on the road. So we're about 2 minutes from the start time, the official start time of the show, and then I'm going to show the vehicle and talk about it and talk about why I went with the 2007 LX 470 as opposed to a LX 570. Why did I make that choice? We're going to talk about that. And Kyle's in the house. He says, will you take it to the car care nut? That is an absolute possibility. We're going to talk about that. So let's see. We've got 30 seconds to the actual official start time of the show, and then we will start on time, unlike the Greyhound buses that none of them were on time. I'm telling you, it was an adventure. I actually enjoyed it because I'm thinking about buying a Prevost bus, and so I wanted to ride on these, and most of them were Prevos that Greyhound had. And so I wanted to experience them, and I wanted to talk to the drivers a little bit about them. And so that was another reason why I opted to go ahead and take the bus. And it was an adventure, to say the least. Okay, it's 5:00. So this is the official start of our show. We're going to talk about why I bought a Lexus LX470, a 2007 model year. Why did I buy that? Okay, first of all, the first criteria was I wanted to buy a vehicle that I can flat tow behind a motor coach. And very few Toyotas can you actually do that with. Turns out this particular model, because it has the manual transfer case and because of the way the all-wheel drive and all is configured, the full-time four-wheel drive, I guess I should say, and I get this from multiple sources of people that have actually done it, is with the manual transfer case, you can put it in neutral, the transfer case, and you can put the transmission in park, okay, in park, leave the key turned on but not turned, leave the key in the ignition but not turned. That unlocks the steering wheel. And they say that you can then safely flat tow one of these vehicles. So I'm counting on that being the case. Again, I researched multiple sources on this, and I think you can do it. And the newer LX570 does not have the manual transfer case. It has an electronically actuated one, which the Toyota 4Runner, the cheaper ones have the electric actuator for the high-low, but some of the models do have a manual transfer case. I prefer the manual transfer case, period, full stop. I think that's the better way to go because that electric actuator can fail and they can have problems going in and out of low range. Again, it's not common because a Toyota is pretty bulletproof, reliable, but if I have my choice, I'd rather have a physical lever that I put in and out of high range, okay? So, and the 2007 and the 2006, I believe, have the horsepower bump and the torque bump and maybe a little bit better miles per gallon. By the way, driving it like a bat out of hell from Georgia back up to Maryland, I got about 15 miles to the gallon, which I was very pleased with that. These are known for being gas hogs, and which the way I see it is vehicles that use a lot of gasoline are generally more heavy duty and more reliable than ones that don't. The Prius is probably the exception of the rule. My 2004 Prius is robust, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so so you can flat tow it. I also really do like the looks. Let me shift over here real quick and let's look here. This is the 570, and it's okay. It just kind of looks a little bit more bulbous, and I don't know if the windows are as tall or if it's just an optical illusion, but it seems like it doesn't have as much of a greenhouse as the 2007. Let me show you the 2007. And when I'm in the car, the visibility is insane. The windshield is huge. You can't really tell from this photo because everything's in proportion. You can't tell how huge things are on this car, but the windows are huge. You can put your arm out. When you put the window all the way down, you can literally put your arm out and rest it on the door, just like you used to be in the old days before they started raising the belt line on all these cars, where you put the window down and you try to put your arm out and your arm's like up out of its socket, up real high. It just doesn't work. And so that was a thing I liked about the 470 is the configuration of it, as far as the shape of the windows, and the windshield I think is even a little bit more vertical. It's more old school. Okay, each generation of these, they became less and less old school, which I don't like. And I also like the headlights being two separate pieces there on the front. I just like the looks of that better. So let's go back to the other one. Whoops, where it's all one piece, see, like that. But people that like the modern styling and all that, I guess they would like this. Okay, I guess they would go for that. But I just prefer the looks of the 470. Did you consider the LX600 brand new model? Yeah, they're ugly. I don't like that grill, and not even a little bit. I just don't like it. And also, I just think they've got too much really complicated stuff going on. I wanted something that was more old school. See, if I'm going to be pulling this behind the coach, and I'm going to be banging around, going up back trails and stuff like that at national parks or whatever, exploring, doing whatever, God knows what, I want something that has less gadgetry and less electronic stuff. The 100 series Land Cruiser, which is basically what the LX470 is, I think was really the last of the kind of still old school units, right? It still had some nice luxury to it and all that, but the basics and the guts of it and all were still pretty solid. I think when you started getting to the 570 and now the 600, that slowly started going away to where they're more complicated. There's more things to potentially go wrong. Like, for example, on the 570, the car care nut. And by the way, I have a link in the description to a video by the car care nut about these. The 570, the pump, the hydraulic pump for the leveling system is located down lower on the right hand side of the car, and the way the lines are configured and stuff like that. He said it's more problematic. It potentially gives more problems than the way the system on the 470 is set up. And that's just one example of things that they just kind of made more complicated and kind of futzed up when they went to the 570. And so give us your prediction on when we cross 100K. Oh, we're talking about Bitcoin. All right, we'll talk about Bitcoin when we finish talking about the the Lexus. And so anyway, for all of these reasons, I decided that the sweet spot was a 2007 LX470. And so I found one that was a pretty nice car. Let's look at some photos of the one that I got. Okay. So that's a photo of it on when I was driving home on the way back. That's a photo when I was on the road. I'd stopped to get a little bite to eat, and so he had put these more aggressive tires on it, which they're a little bit oversized and so forth. And surprisingly, it still rode very good and very quiet and very great on the highway. Great highway car. I was running 80, 90 miles an hour, and it was like I was in my living room. So these tires, I would thought they'd be real noisy and stuff, but there's so much sound insulation in these cars that it worked fine. But they wouldn't be my choice. I would stay more stock on the tires, but you know, they look kind of cool. So one thing you're going to see on a lot of these is the seats are going to be kind of cracked and scrubbed on where you get in and out, because the truck is so high. When you get in and out, you tend to drag yourself across the seat. But this seat was in really good shape, so that's an indicator that, you know, the vehicle is low mileage and was well kept, and that seat is not every which way. And underneath, you want to look for rust on these. That's the Achilles heel for these vehicles, is rust. And this one spent most of its life. It did spend about a year up in Connecticut, up in rust country, but that was about a year. And then the rest of its life, it spent in Florida and or Georgia. I have all the documentation on that. So it has very minimal, if any, rust, but pretty much no rust as far as structural things and all. The muffler, you can see there, has some rust on it, which is normal. But structurally, it's really sound. And you can see from all these photos. Some of these that frame will literally be rusted out, and you got to really be careful, because you just bought nothing. You know, you wasted your money. And you also want to make sure that it has the original glass, preferably the original windshield, because sometimes when they replace those windshields, they don't do it right, and you get a water leak, and that can cause major electrical problems inside the vehicle. So this one had the original glass, all original paint, of course. All the panels have the serial number sticker, so you know that none of the panels have been replaced. So this is at the gentleman's home that I bought it from. He was in a pretty nice neighborhood there outside of Atlanta. He puts in pools for a living, installs pools, swimming pools. Most of these photos are from him, okay, selling it. So there you go. And that's the hotel room I stayed in when I arrived. That's the Marriott. And there's a Greyhound. And there's me in my travel garb, you know, ready for trouble. See the cane in my left hand? You can barely see it. In this next photo, I think that's the hotel I stayed at. That's me on the bus. There's the cane. See, I carried that. Okay. What do you think about that? All right. And there I am back in the garage here. There's the rear compartment of the vehicle. So yeah, I like the tailgate. So yeah, I think it's the way to go. I think Lexus LX470 2007 could be one of the best vehicles ever made. It's a vehicle that you can actually service. You can actually replace parts as needed. You can service things, like you can grease and repack the front bearings. You know, they're not sealed bearings. You can actually grease and repack them when you do a brake job. You can actually service things on this vehicle. And it's designed to be out in really remote, you know, serious situations, heavy duty situations, and just keep on going. And let me play this clip from and we will talk about the Bitcoin price. Let me play this clip from the Car Care Nut. And I did put the link for the rest of this video in the description, but check this out.
Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. So, should you buy a Toyota Land Cruiser? Are they really as good as people say they are? Well, in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Land Cruisers. I'll share with you the service side of Land Cruisers and how good or not good are they really, from my experience working at a Toyota dealership as a Toyota Master Diagnostic Technician. But before we get, the Toyota Land Cruiser has a spot on its own. It's It's almost like it's not just a Toyota, it's just a brand of its own. And as we make this video, unfortunately, the sales of the Land Cruiser are stopping in the United States due to low sales, due to many other factors. But nonetheless, the Land Cruiser remains an icon in the Toyota lineup, and it is. So if we look at the V8 engine in the 200 series Land Cruiser, it's a 5.7 liter 3UR FE engine. Now if you look at that engine, it's actually shared with other models across the Toyota lineup, like the Sequoia, the Tundra, and then if you look at the Lexus side, it is of course shared with the LX, and different variants of this engine, different sizes, are also shared with other models. But are they really the same? Is this engine exactly the same as the one in the Sequoia and the Tundra? Well, in order to answer that, let me first show you this engine the way I see it, not the way any owner would open the hood. Just like this. Just like this. So the thing about this engine is, the way I can tell you that this engine is completely different, even though it is the same engine, same components, same everything, but the build of this engine is completely different, is the way the common problems show themselves. Now, if we go look at a Tundra or a Sequoia, something that is notorious with this engine, actually a few things. One of them is cam tower oil leaks. Now, the cam tower is the part of the cylinder head that sits on top that houses the camshafts. They're notorious to leak, but all the Land Cruisers that I've seen, and trust me, there are many, I've never seen one with a leaking cam tower. And then you look at the small details of the fit and finish of the engine bay, the sealer application, everything around. It is just not the same level. And that doesn't mean that the other ones are inferior, but it means that this one takes things to the next level.
Okay, so the whole the link to that whole video is in the description. I highly recommend you check it out. He goes into detail about the different things and how they're made on the Land Cruiser versus the other models. Even the plastics and all are higher quality plastics, like the radiator hoses, you know, all the things. The radiator itself is more robust and bigger. Everything is overbuilt. He even talked about, like, one time he had to replace a seat, like the front seat, and it was like, I don't know, $6,000 or something. I mean, some insane price for the front seat, right? And he said that you you need like two people to carry it out of the car. It's so heavy, right? He said like a door panel on a normal Lexus will be maybe held on by 3 screws, and so the Land Cruiser will be held on by 8, right? And everything is just overbuilt like that. And so it's a whole different level of construction. And I think it's just because this is specifically built to be in harsh environments, to be going down rough roads all the time. You know, when I drove this car back, there wasn't a squeak, rattle, there wasn't anything. It was just rock solid, the whole thing. And so that's why you have twice as many screws holding something on, right, than a normal vehicle. Now, the downside to all of this is everything is also more expensive to fix. So like the brake master cylinder part that has a pump on it and all, it's not vacuum actuated, it has a pump and everything. It's all one big assembly. That part is $1,000. Okay. So, it'll probably last 300,000 miles or maybe 400,000 miles, but eventually when you have to replace it, it's got $1,000 for the part. So that's the downside to everything being overbuilt, is when you do have to fix something, it's going to be more expensive. But to my way of thinking, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them putting the best parts they can in and sourcing parts that can take a lot of abuse and so forth. Because when I turn that key and I'm ready to go, I want to go. I don't want to have failures. Okay. How many miles on it? Mine has 133,000 miles on it. This was the question here. Okay. And Kyle had another comment. It seems like he agrees that Japan-made Toyotas are superior to those made. Yes. He's also talked about that. And particular models that are made in Japan. Like there's a factory where the Land Cruisers are made. I think it's the same factory where they make the LS sedans, and I think they still make the 4Runner there, at least for now. So that particular factory, and I forget the name of it, but you can Google it. You'll find videos all about it on on YouTube, there's a bunch of guys that talk about the factory where these are made. It's a whole nother level. It's like the best technicians that they have, the guys that have been working for Toyota for like 40 years. You know, everything is just higher level at that particular factory. So any of the vehicles made at that factory are at a higher level. And then the Land Cruiser is at a level higher than that because they spec parts that are even more robust. It doesn't share. He was talking about the engine. Like if you get a water pump for a Land Cruiser with the 4.7 engine, it's not the same water pump as the 4.7 in a Sequoia or whatever, right? It's a whole different part. Okay. It ain't just a different part number. It's a whole different part yeah, Tahara, that's it. Yeah. So it's a whole different part, right? And so that's the thing. And I think that the reasoning behind it was they just want these things to be robust. They know people are going to be using these in harsh environments. That's why the air filter is huge on them, right? The air filter is huge because all the dust, they're running on dusty roads all the time and stuff, right? And so everything is just overbuilt. I mean, that is the word for it. And I like that. I like that. I'm old school. I like something that is really well built. That's why I'm looking at getting a motor coach based on the Prevost chassis because it's all stainless steel. The chassis, you know, it's robust. The one I'm thinking about getting has the Series 60 diesel engine in it, which is a very robust diesel engine. The one I'm looking at is pre-emissions controls, so no EGR, you know, exhaust gas recirculation system, no DEF, no diesel particulate filter, none of that crap, right? The one I'm looking at getting. So it's just going to be robust. And again, serviceable. If if it needs front bearings, if it needs a kingpin, you know, whatever, the bus grease monkey can do that. Okay. And Kyle talked about having it serviced by like the car care nut. Once I get the coach, it'll be a piece of cake for me to swing by and spend a month or so in a nice campsite, you know, resort or whatever near him in Chicago, and take the car to him and say, here, you know, take a week or two or however long it takes, do whatever it needs, right? And I can just hang out in the Chicago area while he does his thing. Absolutely, I will do that. And I did find a guy down in Virginia that's about an hour and a half drive from me that also specializes in Land Cruisers, and he seems pretty good. He's got some videos up on YouTube. He seems like he's kind of similar to the car care nut guy as far as wanting to do things right and knowing how to work on a Land Cruiser. Land Cruisers are more difficult to work on because of the way they're built, because of the way they're overbuilt, right? You talked about trying to take that seat out, right? I mean, this thing's 5,500 pounds, folks. The vehicle without a load, the dry weight is like 5,500 pounds. I mean, it's insane. And I'll tell you what, people delete the hydraulic suspension system in these things. I wouldn't. I'd keep it maintained. I'll keep it maintained because I like it. It makes the thing ride really nice. It's got different settings, but it rides nice. And I like that system. I think they ride pretty good, even if you delete it and put in a Land Cruiser system, which without the height control, I think they still ride pretty good. But I think they ride even better with a fully functional hydraulic suspension system. Okay, and I'll keep mine fully functional. I've researched it. It's not a huge big deal. But again, if things fail, they're expensive to fix. But you fix them. That's what you do, and you fix them with OEM parts. Okay, you put the real parts in there. Let's see. Yeah, automotive press speaking about, yeah, I already put that up. Okay, so you asked about, okay, so I talked about servicing it, where I'm going to get it serviced. By the way, I already ordered the OEM hydraulic fluid for the hydraulic system that I'm going to have flushed, and I might even do that myself. It's not that tricky to do, and I've got a whole snap-on tool set and everything. I've got all the stuff I need to do it, so I might even do that myself. See if I can do some of the things myself. then I know they're absolutely done correctly and somebody didn't screw up my vehicle, right? That's the advantage where I like, if I do something myself on my car, like if I change the oil, I know that I torqued the drain plug correctly. I didn't strip it out or whatever, right? All these things that can happen. Yeah, if I do it, I know it's going to be done right. So I might even do some of these things myself. All right, Kyle asked about when are we going to hit 100,000 on Bitcoin? My target, as you know, that we talked about a couple of shows back for 100,000 was November. That was when I was planning on buying the Lexus LS sedan and a potentially the GMT, the gold GMT watch by liquidating one Bitcoin. We talked about that. I bought an extra Bitcoin for 16,000 that I earmarked for doing that, right? It's not part of my cold storage Bitcoin. It's just an extra one that I bought just to do something fun with, right? And so I think we might be ahead of schedule on that. I think we might hit 100,000 before November. It's hard to tell, but what is happening is we are definitely getting steady buying by the Bitcoin ETFs, buying that exceeds the daily issuance of 900 Bitcoin a day by like a factor of 10. I think they're buying like 9,000 Bitcoin a day, something ridiculous like that. So they're buying up the Bitcoin for the Bitcoin ETFs. And then the supply is going to be cut in half next month to 450 a day. But that's not the thing. That people talking about the halving. I mean, it's like a marketing thing. It's great. It's something to talk about. It's a buzzword, and it creates more adoption. That's the key to the value of Bitcoin is the adoption, and that's what the Bitcoin ETFs have done. Is they're increasing the adoption of the network, and people are buying the Bitcoin in the ETFs. And then other people are learning about it because of the ETFs and just buying it and self-custodying it. So it's all good for Bitcoin. Some people say everything's good for Bitcoin, and that's pretty much true. But the variable, the thing that we don't know is how much Bitcoin the Bitcoin OGs will sell and the youngsters that got into Bitcoin, 5 or 6 years ago that want to buy a house or want to buy a Lambo or whatever, is some of these people have weak hands and some of these people will sell their Bitcoin. They're selling it right now. Okay. We know they're selling it right now because, like I said, the Bitcoin ETFs are buying up more Bitcoin than what is being issued each day, the new Bitcoin. They're buying like 10x that. So we know that people have weak hands that are holding Bitcoin that are selling to these guys, right? What we don't know is when will they run out of Bitcoin to sell? How many months or years will that take? We don't know that. That's the variable that we don't know. We do know roughly how many Bitcoin the ETFs are buying, and they've been pretty consistent about that. We do know how many new Bitcoins are being issued. We know that. But we don't know when these guys that are selling their Bitcoin to the ETFs, when are they going to run out of Bitcoin to sell? Some of them have thousands of Bitcoin literally, right? So they could probably be selling for years, right? So we don't know, but what I think is going to happen is slowly but surely, more and more of them will run out of Bitcoin to sell, and there will at some point be a serious supply shock where these ETFs still want to buy Bitcoin and other billionaires and other people coming in. See, what's ironic about the whole Bitcoin thing right now is Bitcoin is flowing right now from what I call the weak hands to the strong hands. And mostly those people with the weak hands, mostly those people are the youngsters. This is what's ironic about it. This was supposed to be a way to transfer the wealth from the rich people to the young people that are the early adopters that adopted Bitcoin, right? They were going to get wealthy because they were early and they got in and they got a bunch of Bitcoin, right? But what's ironic is the opposite is happening. they're the ones selling their precious Bitcoin to the older folks that have these ETFs. That, the folks that have brokerage accounts and all that are buying through these ETFs, they're mainly older people, from 50 years of age on up, right? They're the ones that are buying up this Bitcoin, right? And the youngsters are selling it. So this actually, and I'm the only one that said this on crypto Twitter or Bitcoin Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I've been saying this for a long time, is the Bitcoin is going to flow from the youngsters to the older folks. It's an irony. It's an ultimate, like about face. I mean, it's like you can't make this stuff up. If all these youngsters had to do, all they had to do was hold with a strong hand, not sell. That's all they had to do, and they would be fabulously wealthy 5-10 years from now, right? Fabulously wealthy. But a bunch of them are not. They just can't hold it. They got to go out and buy something. They got to go out and buy a Lambo or whatever. And so they're selling their precious Bitcoin, and I don't think they'll ever get it back. I don't think some of them will ever get that Bitcoin that they sold back, because the price will be so high, they just won't be able to buy it back. So, so let me know. What do you guys think about that? It'd be cool to have Jeff and British Hodl on together for a show. Yeah, that would be interesting. But here's the thing about Bitcoin. I mean, I've already pretty much said it all. I've already on many shows begged and pleaded with people to get to at least one Bitcoin, like British Hodl's been saying. I years ago I was saying get to 21 Bitcoin. I was saying that's the number. You want to have 21 Bitcoin set aside in cold storage and never touch it. Don't touch it. And people just don't listen. They just don't do it. And then when I started saying, well, at least get one Bitcoin. Like I told my buddy down in Virginia, he's broke. I told him he's like 56 years old now. He's got no retirement. He's got nothing, right? Got very little equity in his house. He's got a note on his car, big loan on his car. He's broke, right? I told him, I said, listen, I said, your only hope is to get yourself one Bitcoin by hook or by crook. The last time I told him this, Bitcoin was $16,000 a Bitcoin, right? I said, your only hope to have a decent retirement is get one Bitcoin now. And he's like, oh, it's a scam, blah, blah, blah. He's totally negative on Bitcoin. I've been literally telling him about Bitcoin since it was $30. $30 a Bitcoin. I've been telling him about Bitcoin. The same guy. And over again, he resists and says, no, this is like 10 years now. It's been going on. Okay. And so, and he still won't consider it and won't talk about it. Won't even talk about it. And he's got no shot. Does he really think Social Security is going to be the solution 10 years from now when he wants to retire, or 20 years from now, that's going to save him? Social Security? I don't know. So really, Kyle, I don't know what else I can do. I did the best I can do. And now people are recommending 0.21. It's like, and I talked to somebody recently, and on Facebook, a Facebook friend, he posted something, and they're all like, what if? What if I'd have bought? Yeah, I heard about Bitcoin when it was $1,000. Another guy said I heard about it when it's $10. Another guy said this and that. No, they're all him and hawing for they missed the boat, right? They didn't buy Bitcoin, and I posted in there. I said, listen, guys, you can still buy it. It's still for sale. Okay, it's 72 grand or 73 grand, whatever it is. It's still cheap. It's cheap right now. Okay? Stop whining and bitching and talking about it. Go and buy yourself some Bitcoin as much as you possibly can. Get it now. And I guarantee you none of them will do it. None of them will do it. They'll all be in the same place 3 years from now when Bitcoin's $350,000 a Bitcoin. They'll be bitching and moaning about how they didn't get it when it was 72,000, you know? So I don't know. I don't know what I can do. What else? I hear you. There are always new listeners. Some folks that never cared before are willing to listen now with institutional money coming in. I mean, yeah, I hear you, Kyle, but I just think that this is why I haven't been doing shows as often as I did in the past. Is I I think I've done my duty. I think I've gone above and beyond as far as, let other people pick up the torch and take it, for a while, because I've beat my head against the wall just for years and years now trying to convince people. I mean, how many times did I tell people on this channel back when we used to have some actual listeners and actually get some view counts? Um, how many times did I tell people to sell their steel Rolexes, their extra ones? Let's say they have 5 steel Rolexes. I'm saying, like, keep the one you like the most, sell the other 4, and buy Bitcoin. One time I did it, Bitcoin was $9,000. I think one time I did it, Bitcoin was $4,000, right? I've done it at various price points. Uh, One time it was $40,000. Bitcoin was $40,000. And I suggested that they sell the steel watches and buy Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin crashed down. The price went way down. And everybody was saying, nah, 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 nah. See, I'm glad I kept my steel Rolexes. Nah, 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 nah. $40,000. Now it's $72,000. I think they would have been better off selling the steel watch and buying the freaking Bitcoin and holding it. Okay. So I I've just I mean, I don't know. I've pushed and pushed and pushed, and I still post every day on Twitter. I've got, I don't know, 9,000 followers or whatever on Twitter, and I post every day about Bitcoin. That's where I post mostly about Bitcoin, is on Twitter. I retweet things, I do new tweets and so forth, because a lot of the people following me there are into Bitcoin, and there are new people, like you say, all the time that might, I might pick up and they might see my stuff. So I still do it because that's easy. That's easy to just post and retweet stuff. Piece of cake. But doing a show like this, it YouTube does not push out my videos anymore. They've kind of like shadow banned me probably because I do talk about Bitcoin, right? Some of my legacy videos still get a lot of views, like the one on Rolex servicing still gets a lot of views because I track everything each month, right? But most of my newer stuff, uh, it'll get a couple hundred views. Some of them might get 1,000 views or whatever. But the days of getting like 50,000 views or 100,000 views are kind of over for this kind of content. They just won't push it out. YouTube won't push it out. So yeah. So I'm happy with just the fact there are some people that listened, right? That went and bought Bitcoin back in the day. And even this year, Eric Stottlemyre from Adventure Park, he bought several Bitcoin. Started at around $26,000 buying, and I think the last Bitcoin he bought it was around $40,000. So he's way up on what he bought just this, earlier this year. Kyle in the house, we need to a show when we get into God Candle territory, though. Yeah, and here's the thing: we are not this bull run that we're in right now. We're kind of in a bull run right now. Most people say once you break the previous record, then you're, and I'm not going to call it an all-time high because it ain't an all-time high. We ain't anywhere near the all-time high. This is just a new record high. Well, once we had a new record high, that's officially a bull market. So I think we're officially in a bull market by any definition right now, but it's still very early because I can tell you how I know when the bull market is starting to peter out is when I start having a bunch of friends on Facebook and stuff like that. when they all start contacting me and asking me about that Bitcoin thing, hey, you've been into that Bitcoin thing for a while. What do you know about that Bitcoin thing, right? When I start getting messages from them on Facebook and text messages on my phone, that's when I know we're at the top, right? In 2017, when we went up to 20 grand, when we got to a peak there, everybody and their uncle was coming out of the woodwork, old friends, old family members. And so you asking me about Bitcoin because they all buy the top, right? That's what they do. They buy the top. So they're all coming out of the woodwork. So that's your top indicator. When you start hearing from everybody and long lost friends and stuff like that asking you about Bitcoin, when the taxi driver or the Uber driver or the Lyft driver, when they ask you about Bitcoin or they start talking about it out of the blue, now you're at peak FOMO and you're at the blow off top. But here's the thing to ponder is, are we even going to have a blow off top this time? Is it going to be different? I predicted a couple of weeks ago that the maximum pullbacks we were going to have was 10% going forward on price. And we did have that. Bitcoin went up to 69,000 and then it pulled back to about 60,000, which was around 10%, right? Close enough for government work. So we had that pullback. We had like a 10% pullback and then it recovered. Then it got bought back up and now it's recovered. And, and we'll get a pullback here and there for 3, 4, 5% or whatever. But we're not getting the 30%, 40% pullbacks, the 70% pullback, the 80% pullback. I don't think we're going to get those anymore. I think those are over. And I'll tell you why I think those are over is the big money people are in now. And I think that the route up is going to be more stair steps. It seems like we're going up. Some days we're going up like $1,000, and the next day we kind of hold steady, and then we go up like $1,000. And it's been a steady increase since these ETFs started buying. I think they are like a buffeting action on the price. I think they're a stabilizing force. I think they are going to just keep methodically buying and buying and buying and driving the price up and up and up. And I think at some point we will get a little bit of a supply shock where those weak hands have kind of run out of Bitcoin to sell. But see, the thing is that everybody has their price. Not me. I'm not selling mine, but most people have their price where if it gets to a certain point, they're like, okay, I'll sell it. Gets to $500,000. I can buy a decent house, not a great house anymore, but decent house. Okay, damn, I'll sell it. I'll sell a Bitcoin for 500,000. Let's buy a house. Somebody that's been renting, younger person doesn't own a house. Now all of a sudden they own a house, right? There's going to be people that are going to sell at $500,000 for that reason, right? And so that is the variable that we don't know is how long is it going to take for the Bitcoin to be shaken out of all the weak hands? When will the Bitcoin be in the hands of people like Michael Saylor, like myself, people that just aren't going to freaking sell? Okay. My Bitcoin that is in cold storage, I ain't selling. Okay. Now that one Bitcoin I bought to buy something, that's going to be sold. So that's an example there. That's a Bitcoin that's going to hit the market, right? One Bitcoin. But how much Bitcoin, how long will it take for the vast majority of the Bitcoin to be in cold, hard, long-term storage? Set aside for long-term, right? And a lot of this Bitcoin that's going into the ETFs, a lot of it is going to be there for a long time, 5, 10 years minimum, right? A lot of those investors are long-term thinkers. They don't trade in and out. That's not their thing. And even if they do, those shares, when somebody sells their shares, if they're bought immediately by somebody else, that's not going to really affect the liquid supply of Bitcoin because they don't have to buy more Bitcoin in that instance. If somebody sells a share of ETF and the other guy buys it pretty much at the same time, that's kind of a wash, right? where you have inflows into the ETF is if a bunch of people want to buy shares and there aren't a bunch of people selling shares. Now they've got to go into the market, over the counter market, and buy some more Bitcoin to populate it into the what they call the net asset value, the amount of Bitcoin that they're managing. So that's how that works. So the thing we've got to really keep an eye on for those who are concerned with Bitcoin price action, which I'm really not. I'm concerned long term with it, but the short term I could care. But the thing to look at is how long is going to take for these weak hands to run out of Bitcoin to sell. That's the thing to ponder. So with that, I think we'll wrap up. We got some good information here. Hopefully, some people will get something out of this and learn something about the rationale of why did I pick that particular vehicle. By the way, I like the tailgate. That's another reason why I wouldn't buy the new one. The 600 doesn't have the tailgate anymore, as far as I know. As far as I know, they got rid of the tailgate. Tell me if I'm wrong, because that would be a deal killer for me. I haven't seen one in person. I haven't examined it and all, but I don't think they have the tailgate anymore. All right, I'm going to wrap this puppy up. Wrap it up, and we will keep you posted. And the next show, we might be talking about my motor coach. I'm negotiating with the gentleman that's selling it, the one I have an eye on, and we're trying to work out a deal. It probably won't be for a while. It probably won't be until April, maybe even May, but we're trying to work out a deal. Kyle's still in the house. He says, congrats on the new truck. Thanks for the show. Well, thank you for tuning in. And if I pick that rig up it's on the West Coast. If I pick that rig up, maybe I'll swing down through and take you guys to dinner. Maybe we'll do that. Might even make dinner for you in the coach. That might be a thing. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we will check you guys later.